of water? How do we value it? How do we know what the value is of fresh water? People feel the need, if they're deciding on comparative investment returns, do we spend money in water, do we spend money in other places, to have methods of comparison between water and other ways in which money might be spent. So cynics might wonder why we need such a question as how do we know the value of water, how to value it, but it's important. Oscar Wilde said, a cynic is a man who knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. And it's easy to be cynical about why do we need to know the value of water, but I think we do. Warren Buffett, who appeals to some people that Oscar Wilde doesn't appeal to, he said virtually the same thing. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. You know, knowing what it's worth to have clean water is something which should underpin the way in which the whole of the water industry develops into the future. And we can think of the costs of water in economic terms or in carbon terms. I'm indebted to yesterday's Times, I knew I was coming here this evening, for equating the carbon footprint of one small 160-gram bottle of water. It has the same carbon footprint, according to the Times yesterday, as 1,000 pints of tap water and 2 plastic bags. So that shows a comparative between the economic carbon cost, rather, of tap water and of bottled water. And the prices are dramatically different too. It's easy when economic value and carbon footprint equate in that sort of way. It's not too easy where they might be different. The water companies also have a responsibility for the natural environment in terms of rivers. Fish are arriving in places where they haven't been for many decades. We have cleaner beaches in many places than was the case over recent decades. We've got wonderful birds appearing near reservoirs where we create. The first thing we've done at Abberton, where we're creating this new expanded reservoir, is to create a place where the birds can come at the site. There are birds presently on the reservoir. They'll be disrupted by the building work that will go on. So the first thing that happened was new scrapings so that bird colonies can develop, and already have developed now, at the side of the reservoir, so they're free, and with walkways, you know, suitably distanced away where people can go and see birds that they wouldn't normally get to see. Priority, that's a question. How much should be spent on developments of that sort? One of the issues around the world that's happening is that investors are very interested in water. The new oil is a sort of phrase that you see tripping off investors' reports. Increasingly they're thinking that there is a huge amount of money to be spent to get the infrastructure around the world in a form where people can get clean water and good sanitation. And that will create opportunities for these global investors to think about where is the money spent and how is it spent and what risk and reward will that provide them. So water offers real opportunities to investors around the world. We have a system in the UK which is designed to help investors have a degree of certainty about what they get when they buy water companies or invest in water companies. And that structure of regulation that I talked about earlier and companies with huge sums to invest, I think it's shown for the last 20 years, in my opinion it's shown for the last 20 years, that we have achieved a lot of efficiency improvements, a lot of investment in improving the reliability and safety of water supplies. Now that we've just had a 5-year pricing review, which is part of an important cycle of regulation for the water industry, we are having a healthy debate again about how we should tackle issues like climate change and what it means for the sort of energy the water industry needs. As ever, we're looking for economic regulators and quality regulators to give us the same messages. In the UK then, we have reasonably well-defined questions, big questions to answer about water in the future, about how do you encourage an efficient and innovative industry. Efficiency and innovation, not unlike, I have to say, the health service and some of the issues which the health service faces. What we can say about other parts of the world is that their position is critical. They wish they had our problems to solve. International aid will remain vital to help solve problems in many places. It's not surprising, I think, that the IAS found water to be such an inspiring and productive subject for study. And Northumbrian Water has been delighted to be involved with the work. We're looking forward to studying all of the outputs, and I'm looking forward to the discussion this evening. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Does anyone want to ask any specific questions at this stage? Questions of fact and clarification rather than discussion? Yes.
You mentioned the water wasted, maybe not specifically wasted, but sewage and blockages. Do you know the rough figure for the amount of water which doesn't get to us, percentage-wise?
Leakage, yes. It's one of the things that we have to measure and set out. And it varies across the country. I think at its worst in London, for example, because of the Victorian sewers, which eventually are coming out. We've got one of the best ones in Essex, but it's up to a third of the water that leaves the reservoir, doesn't get to consumers' taps. And we've just had a very bad winter where we had a very large number of bursts of pipes that increased leakage again, but that's roughly the number nationwide.
So the average will be, obviously, because of the bad winter, it'll have a bad effect on the figures. It's been going
down. I mean, one of the things that Ofwat target for us are leakage rates. They have a good sense to do it on a 3-year average, so that if you get a really bad winter, it gets into the 3-year figures. And so we, for example, although we had a very bad winter, are still meeting our 3-year averages. And the attempts are to get that down. And we have a lot of major investment in places where we know there are leaks. There's a lot of new technology going in to sort of spot where the leaks are. There's some new technology into how do you mend leaks, where people are trying to use little bits of rubber like platelets to sort of find the leaks and stop them. So a lot of work going into it.
When you mentioned the international aspect, clearly you can't cover everything, but I'm aware of the fact that there's already conflict over water in adjacent countries, and previously I thought that was kind of Middle East, but I'm aware of it happening in Europe as well now. Obviously we're quite fortunate to some extent in that we have 4 nations in one island, well 2 islands I guess. So that would be an issue, conflict over water resources.
Yeah, we don't have it quite in that way. I mean, here we do have it here in the sense that in Essex, for example, it doesn't rain enough to provide water for the population of Essex. So we take water from Norfolk by pipeline. It's when people have looked at the national grid, which I mentioned in passing, frequently there have been some very small localised solutions put in place. Severn Trent recently have produced a report suggesting there should be larger transfers of water, although they would probably happen by a combination of local transfers. So we have it within the country, the same issue. You're absolutely right. When you get something which is so valuable for human life, if your next door neighbour has a lot of it and you don't, and there are political tensions which are there anyway, then of course
Wales may well have an issue now over exporting so much water to England, and they may choose to charge more for that, for example.
Wales?
Yes.
Well, Wales is covered by Ofwat in the same way as England, and so far that's not been an issue we're going to go to war with Wales. I mean, by and large, there are economic questions. How much should we be paid for the water which we send to other places? But they're economic questions which are relatively easy.
Well, Cumbrians might have a view about Manchester taking so much Cumbrian water.
Well, they might, but would they? I mean, not compared with some of the international issues. I think
I'm just saying there are local conflicts and there are international.
There are. Yeah.
One of the problems in some parts of the world, I don't think it affects the northeast, is the number of times that the water is reused. Are there figures? How many times did the water go through a population and still be used?
Well, no. I mean, it goes through populations all the time. I mean, so water is what it is. It's recycled in the sense it goes up there, comes down somewhere, and then it's recycled again. So water is always reused.
Specifically, sewage being purified and put back into the general drinking supply.
We've got one place in Northumbrian water where sewage is purified and put back into a river. And the water that goes, it's at Langford in Essex, the water that goes into the river is, by any measure that sort of DWI are looking at, purer than the water that's in the river before we put that water in. But that's a sort of scheme because Essex is short of water and